It was actually like we all understood that there is something that dividing Americans is not good for America. So we set out a ridiculous goal to get 100,000 veterans to be poll workers in 2024. And we are still not yet at the election. And we have 141,000 veteran and military family members signed up for 2024.
Welcome to The Lasting Mission, a podcast dedicated to sharing the powerful stories and experiences of veterans, their families, and supporters. Presented by Mission Roll Call, a nonpartisan movement providing veterans with a powerful, unified voice that is heard by our nation's leaders and communities. For information, visit missionrollcall.org.
All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Lasting Mission podcast. I'll be your host, Ray Whitaker, and today, yet again, we have an amazing guest that's going to join us. I want to talk just a little bit about her before you guys get an opportunity to actually talk to her or listen to her, depending on how you're seeing this. First off, she's a co-founder, executive director for We the Veterans and Military Families. She's a proud Navy spouse. She's a Navy and Coast Guard granddaughter. She has an impressive business acumen. So for me, kind of looking at this as an entrepreneur, it's great to see all the things that she's involved with. She's a co-founder of We the Veterans, co-founder of Military Family Building Coalition, co-founded FEED, which is attached to UN World Food Program. She's going to talk a little bit about that and kind of what that means. She co-directed Summit Institute. She's an author, right? One thing that I'm not good at is writing, but obviously she is. She's an author of We the Eaters. If we change dinner, we can change the world. She's Fortune Most Powerful Woman Entrepreneur. She's got 4 TED Talks. And most importantly, out of all of that I just said, what I want you to understand, she demonstrates consistent, selfless service to others. So Ellen, before I butcher your name, I'd like to bring you onto the podcast, have you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, how to say your last name so I don't do what I did in the military, which is just say people's names. And then let us learn a little bit about you and your time leading up till now.
Thanks so much, Ray Y. Taker. Just kidding.
There you go. Okay, now I want to say it, right? Now I want to butcher it.
Go for it. Try it. It's Gustafsson. It's a Swedish last name. And before anyone asks me if I know their family member in Minnesota, my Swedish family didn't make it there. They stopped at the Three Rivers in Pittsburgh. And I kind of joked that they were too lazy to make it all the way to Minnesota. So there, I've said it myself.
You said it. Okay, good. Write that down.
So I'm so psyched to be here. You guys do incredible work. And I think, the more the veteran and military family community can kind of work in alignment across all of the different things that matter to us, the better, because we, of course, all have the best interest of both the service member and their family at heart.
Absolutely. Well, I think with any person, right, especially somebody like you or anybody that we bring on to the podcast, we always like to understand the personal story first, right? Because I find there's always a reason they end up kind of where they are and why they're selflessly serving. So for you, I'd love for you to just share a little bit about your past and really how you ended up doing all of the things that you've done up until where you are now.
Okay, well, that's a long story.
It is, and that's okay.
But I mean, look, I grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia. I was very connected to the fact that my grandfathers were both in the military. Many of my uncles had served in Vietnam. My dad had a heart condition, which meant he couldn't. And I think that was always part of the story. He felt a little bit of guilt about that, although it was not his fault. And I grew up in a very patriotic family that, it was just part of the fabric of my life, just recognizing that we're so grateful to be in America. I think part of the story is also that my dad did a lot of work overseas, kind of as an entrepreneur. And so I was able to travel to places, not just to Paris, but I went to the Middle East, and I went to Russia when people still did that. When I was a really young person, and seeing the fact that, damn, we are really happy to be born where we are, made me even more patriotic going into my young life. And then I went to college in New York City, and while I was there and a senior in college, I'm now fully dating myself, 9/11 hit our city. That planes flew into down the street from me, my backyard, and I had already been studying, as weird as this sounds, I'd already been studying terrorism in some of my classes for my undergrad degree in international relations. And so I was one of the weird freaks who knew the names of some of these organizations and people when 9/11 happened. And so I quickly tried to get an internship because I, was so passionate about understanding why and how do we, get back at these people and stop them. And so as a college student, I went to Columbia University in New York City. I started working at the Council on Foreign Relations, which is a really nerdy think tank, but I worked for 4 active duty military members it was like an 06 fellowship where they take sort of a year to go and work at this think tank. And working with senior military officers in New York City from 2002 to 2003 was unbelievable. And I say that, and I think what kicks off my whole story is it was a moment of undying unity in our country. Mm-hmm. Everywhere I went, every person I talked to, every interaction I had working with these military people was 1,000% patriotic, positive, grateful. There was no sense of this type of person loves the military, this person, like none of it. Everyone was a New Yorker on that day or a Washingtonian. Every American was grateful to have the military that we have. And I will never allow that knowledge, knowing that that's possible, to die and not to remember that we can live like that again and we can be unified like that again.
Yeah, that's I can tell you that I definitely feel, I often talk about that time period of just seeing, even in the military side, seeing the variation of like all services were kind of separated, and that act like everybody, I mean, and that's across all, right? That's not just the military, but that's also the government, like everybody, civilian, corporations. I mean, that was the first time that you saw something like that. So I can see why now some of that's happened for you. So from that, what inspired you to like give back? You know what I mean? Because the selfless service part of this, I mean, you obviously 9/11 had a huge impact on all of us. And I see my son now is impacted by that. He's obviously way younger than that time period, but he does understand that idea because it lives and resonates through me and of course those who I live with. So what inspired you to start that selfless service and kind of the journey that you've been on thus far?
Well, I think, first of all, being in this moment of being in many ways like feeling a little bit like a victim, not really, because I was perfectly safe, but that you can be attacked, right? Like it can happen to you. You are completely innocent. I just live in this country and people don't like you and they come and can do something really scary and bad. I lost friends in the Twin Towers. It was a split second and all of a sudden, bad guys came and hurt us. And so I think, that is a thing. I mean, otherwise, when would I, as a young woman going to a good college, ever have felt that way, right? Mm-hmm. Except for that exact moment. But then fast forward, I think I became so passionate about giving back in my career because I was pretty tapped into what made me feel good about myself as a young person. And it was 100%, do I feel like I'm using my powers for good? And right. It was, I mean, it's so in many ways, like that's a story of selfishness, right? Like I felt really good when I was using my brains and my energy and my time to help others. And so I kept doing it, and I think that's an example of trying it, right? Everyone should try to do, to volunteer or to do something where you that you are of service. Everyone in the military does know that they have been of service. Every veteran knows that. But I think it's addictive. And that's, I know a lot of my friends, veteran friends understand that feeling. So early in my career, I was working at this think tank. I was doing stuff that really felt like it impacted U.S. foreign policy. I became obsessed with the connection between places around the world where terrorism flourished and places around the world that had humanitarian crises like hunger. And so my career pivoted from this feeling of, wow, I want to kind of stop these conflicts to like, what's underneath these conflicts? And then I became obsessed with food systems. And that led me on a 10-year focus of my career to the United Nations World Food Program. I then started a company to raise money for the World Food Program. That company ended up being an early stage of now what we now call B Corps, which are these for-profit, nonprofit sort of double bottom line businesses. And we were just like right at the beginning of that. And then I became even more passionate as I traveled to the developing world more frequently, seeing how in many places around the world, and a lot of people who've traveled through the military have seen this, there's rampant hunger in many of these places, and there's growing obesity in many of these places. And I became interested in that connection. So I wrote a book. I did a bunch of TED Talks about this connection between hunger and obesity. And again, this is all just like personal passion fueled. Like what, like why does this happen? Why has no one else figured out why this happens? Who's writing about this? Who's saying these things? I want to do it. And so that kind of led me on another, like I said, 10-year trajectory. And ironically, it was after all of that I married into the military.
Yeah, I think that's the norm. Well, because it's something that you love, right? Like, I mean, that's and it's almost like perfect. It's like I sent you questions and you're just kind of leading down them and not even trying. The thing I always find interesting about when I talk about nonprofit work, and this is anybody that's in the space, it's about finding a tribe, right? Like there's two sides of this. You find a tribe, people that are, similar, have similar beliefs, the ideas that you have. And then there's this other side where you get a satisfaction. And I love that you call it selfish, because it is, right? It's that dopamine hit of selfishness that is selfless, because you are so connected to it, right? Like that's why we do the things that we do, why folks get connected to sodas and like all these bad things, because there is this hit of dopamine or this thing that makes you feel good. And I think that that's interesting. So my question for you is, how is nonprofit work just for you mentally, physically, and personally been important? I mean, have you tried to venture outside of it and then immediately come back because you just feel so much better being in this space?
Well, I think I have a weird answer to that, which is that it's not so much nonprofit work that gets me going. I don't give a shit what the structure is, whether it's a nonprofit or a for-profit, but how can we structure an organization to do the most good? In some circumstances, that is a nonprofit, absolutely. And in some circumstances, that's actually a for-profit. So I've been an entrepreneur starting both of those types of entities. And it literally just depends on, okay, what vehicle will help me do to accomplish the mission that I want to accomplish, to get the thing done. And in many cases, nonprofits are the way to do that. And getting people to support the work that you're doing from outside is the way to do that. But in some cases, it actually is to start a business to solve that big of a problem.
No, I love that, because philanthropy, just thinking about what a company or a for-profit does, many do that. Many are focused on the good pieces of that, which kind of leads us into the organizations. Now, you've got a lot of organizations that we could talk about, but I really want to talk about the genesis of, kind of vet the vote, which is like the main piece that we're going to talk about, but kind of how that was initiated out of something completely different.
Yeah.
I'd love to get your take of kind of how this goes.
So let me just backtrack 1 minute, because I think this is a really important story that military community members will understand. And very often people outside the military family have no idea what I'm talking about. But there is a critical moment that happened in my life that you guys are going to think is wild, but it actually was it's one of the fundamental stories I have. When I was working for these senior military officers, I would go way back when I was in my early 20s. I would go to these dinners where the military would put on dinners, right? I went to a dinner at the superintendent of the Naval Academy, for example. At a military dinner like that, with distinguished visitors in the audience, there's something that happens that doesn't happen anywhere else. I've never seen anywhere else in the world, which is that the culinary specialists come out, they introduce themselves, where they're from, and they tell the people that are in the room what they're going to eat. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, is what has made me deeply passionate and patriotic about our military. And it has nothing to do with what people might think. It's that culinary specialist is essential for the mission. Essential. It doesn't happen without that person's work. It's honorable. It's important. It's just as important as whatever the admiral is going to yap about. And they deserve to be out there in front of the people that are eating this amazing food, getting some credit and being part of the greater mission. And I think the rest of the country can really learn something from that. But I just want to say that as a person who loves food and who has been super patriotic, that has been one of the defining moments for me in why I love this community so much. And then, so moving forward in my life, I married into the military. I did the thing with which I actually joke about. I think it's part-time marriage, especially before you have kids, is the best. That's the secret, guys. Yep. And we lived that way, of course, back and forth deployments, whatever. Once you have kids, it's a little more annoying to have a part-time spouse. But so as a military spouse, during COVID lockdown, I was a solo parent during lockdown. I had 1-year-old twins and a not yet 3-year-old. And I can tell you that I was definitely in the fight in that moment. But I was also feeling that of anyone in the country, we were all dealing with the struggle of lockdown, but of anyone in the country, the people that got me the most were my fellow military spouses, like were my community of military spouses. Cause like there's the extra layer of like a deployed partner and that on top of COVID lockdown that I felt like no one else gets this except for this narrow swath of people. My community of military spouses, though, is a wildly diverse set of perspectives. So the people that I connect with on social media from, that are fellow military family communities, community members are not all one political party. They're not all one perspective on any issue. They're just a really wide array of people and perspectives. And I think that's unique in America. So what I'm saying is I don't live in a media silo. I don't live only hearing one story. But during that summer of 2020, what I was seeing is stuff that on both sides of the political spectrum seemed like it wasn't right. And I started to deeply think about the fact, as a person who had studied terrorism and had worked kind of in this, national security infrastructure, is could it be that our enemies are like loving this shit and are loving that Americans, even military family members, are like divided about stuff that I don't even know what's, it's hard for Americans to know exactly what's right and wrong in some of these areas. And so I became really passionate about understanding, like, are our foreign adversaries just drumming up these differences between Americans using social media, using media to sort of divide us further? And are they all laughing at this? And I went on like a little personal, this is how I do it. Like I just went on this like personal education journey. And I found a really smart guy who was an Army veteran who worked on, he was the head of the Consortium for the Study of Terrorism and Responses to Terrorism. I was like, that's my guy. West Point. He was like, yes. And it's not even about what the misinformation or information, whatever word you want to use. It's not even about what it is. It's just like our enemies love that we're divided, period, full stop. And so I became really interested in like, can we do something about that? And again, not about like what the content is, but can we do something to talk to our community about the fact that our foreign enemies love when we're divided as a country? Now, remember, hearkening back to me being obsessed with this like post 9/11 moment of unity, this was like jarring to see Americans fighting more with each other, right? Like that's not your enemy, dudes. They're over there. And so the start of We the Veterans and Military Families is like, can we do something about the fact that Americans are divided potentially by our adversaries and are becoming more polarized? And that's what we set out to do as an organization. Can we do something about essentially like polarization as a community that knows better? Because we know you can work with people from all different backgrounds. We know you can rely on them. Can we be a voice to reduce that polarization and bring Americans back together on core values? So that's the genesis of We the Veterans and Military Families.
Yeah, and that's great. I mean, it's like the melting pot, right? So my first duty station was Fort Bragg, and I just remember the first time somebody telling me that all American, and then what the idea of all American truly is it's like it's all races, it's all religions, it's everything, right? So your battle buddy, in one team or one squad is different than your next team or next squad, and you truly learn that it's okay to have differences and live different lives. At the end, we're all driving towards the same thing, right? Like there's always an end state to accomplish the mission or whatever we may be doing that day. So it's good to see that, from your perspective, and I think part of this comes from your time, as you talked about with the stuff that you've done, is I think you've kind of seen some of that transparency inside of the military, right? Being inside of, and this is a government in many ways, some of the government agencies as well, but like how this push is always towards driving to that end state. I think the one thing that the military and corporate side is a little bit different is that the corporate side is a little bit faster sometimes on making changes based off what that mission is, where the government is a little bit less apprehensive to change too fast. We want to continue to drive forward until we can't, depending on where you are, special operations versus normal military, so forth and so on. Okay, so you got this up and running, right?
We started this organization, yeah.
Right. You've got this thing kind of started. The basis of it, you've got as we call, you always bring somebody in that is smarter than you to help with this idea. Now the train starts to drive. What's the next steps now to take this idea, create a foundational team to really then start to make it bigger and make it as impactful as you're talking about, where you have, can we impact this?
Yeah. So we take, I talked to this guy, Bill, the Army vet, met a number of other veterans kind of through just random networks of like talking about this stuff. And he had some recommendations. I mean, we just kind of cobbled together a group, and this was, and I say this is so weird. I have no idea who all these people had voted for. Like, that wasn't the thing. It was actually like, we all understood that there is something that dividing Americans is not good for America. Full stop. And so how do we, regardless of what we actually feel about politics or candidates or whatever, how do we find ways to move beyond that? And where are the real dividing lines? Well, pretty quickly after kind of getting in the mix with this stuff in 2020, the whole thing about whether or not American elections are free and fair was bubbling to the surface. And it was not a matter of like, do I know the whole real truth? No, it was that neither do you, Facebook, Instagram poster. And I think as a military spouse, it's like, how many times do you hear people yapping? I mean, I can tell you this, like people that I was, friends with in New York City yapping about what the military didn't do, never having served, never having been close to, never barely met anyone in the military. I'm like, thanks for your opinion. Please zip it until you decide you're going to actually, sign on the dotted line, like get in the game, right? That's how I was feeling about the idea that people were saying that America, by the way, radical patriot here, America somehow like didn't do elections well. And I was like, well, I don't know personally, but also I'm not going to talk about it if I don't know. And we around the same time had learned that there was a huge deficit for people, volunteers, like the little old ladies that go and give you your pen and tell you where the paper is and check your ID or whatever country, county you're in, not country, county, sorry. And like get, help you vote, right? That's all volunteers. That's all people that like raise their hand and sign up. Now, like the military, they volunteer, but they also get paid. So that's just like community members, right? So I was like, oh my God, there's a deficit of that. A group of us got together and learned from one of our Marine Corps veteran friends that he and his wife had been poll workers. And they were like, it was so cool having been a Marine veteran and then going to be this poll, because I felt like I was serving again. I was doing it with people from all different backgrounds. I was learning, the guy jokes, Joe Plenzo's his name. He jokes that the thing you have to read through the instruction manual to being a poll worker, he calls it Marine proof. Like he could read it, he understood it. His words, not mine. Okay. I'm not making fun of, but the point is to say, he said it was amazing. We were like, well, why don't we try to get more veterans and military spouses to be poll workers? Like, and again, the narrative is simple. I'm not trying to tell you what is or what isn't, blah, blah, blah. Get in the game and don't bitch about it on Facebook when you literally have never done it. And also, in the Constitution, elections are left up to the states. So you get all kinds of Americans who like to yap about what they know or don't know about the Constitution. By the way, September 17th, Constitution Day, just recently. Mm-hmm. And like, guys, they're supposed to be different. Arizona is supposed to be different from Pennsylvania because that's what the Constitution says. So you get these people yapping online like, oh, look how they do. Like, you literally don't know. Like, literally zip it or go get in the game. So successfully, amazingly, wonderfully, our community turned the hell out. We put out a call. We engaged organizations like Mission Roll Call to be part of our coalition. We invited military veterans and military family members to join this need, fill this need. We heard that America needed 120,000 new volunteers to make the elections of 2022, the midterm elections, run. Our coalition recruited 63,500. So veterans and military family members filled half of America's deficit for the entire country in just 2022. So we were like, this is it, man. Yeah. We got responses from people. They loved it. They were like, this was the most amazing feeling I've had since being in the military. I'm working for my country. I'm working with my neighbors. And then we figured out this is a really crystal clear ask to bring Americans together. And the name Vet the Vote is intentional, right? Let's bring veterans into the vote and let's vet that the vote is indeed American, so it's therefore free and fair and secure.
Yeah. Wow. That's good on y'all for, identifying a gap and then finding a way to fill it. I mean, that's any business's, claim to fame is that, right? Finding a gap and then continuously keep filling it. I know that when I came here, Cole, which I know you guys have had an opportunity to speak to a couple times, he's done a fabulous job with the advocacy portion here inside the organization of getting us where we are. He mentioned y'all's name. I was like, yeah, I know who they are. And this is for somebody who has not been in what I would call the political realm, because it's never been my thing until now. But I do know that because that was something that was meaningful, right? So good on you guys for doing that. What, from your perspective, I mean, now we've had a couple of years, you guys have been, operating this, we absolutely love to support what you're doing because of all the things you've already said. I don't need to rehash those. What are some goals from your perspective that the team and you talk about to make this better, right? To continue to have a fair process through the electoral process that we have in each state that obviously picks our community leaders and then ultimately our federal leaders as well.
Yeah. So what's been really cool is we started, we used the same coalition, started working on 2024, definitely wanted to make sure we had enough poll workers in America, but also we are the most trusted community. Military family members and veterans are literally America's most trusted community. And so, okay, if we can get many of these people to be in zip codes and in jurisdictions across the country, actually handling the ballots and doing the work, can we help remind Americans that, first of all, this is what you should be doing. If you don't trust the system, get in the system.
That's right.
And second of all, that the most trusted Americans are actually doing the thing. So we set out a ridiculous goal to get 100,000 veterans to be poll workers in 2024. And we are still not yet at the election. And we have 141,000 veteran and military family members signed up for 2024. That is, so they say that America has about around 1 million poll workers for a general election. That's 14%. That is a huge percent of all poll workers in America are coming from us. And we know that they are people with integrity. We know that they know how to follow orders. We know that they know how to work with many backstops. Like, hey, if this part gets messed up, don't worry. We have this 3 other steps in the back to correct for it. That's literally how everything works in the military. And so we feel really confident going into this election that as long as Americans know that veterans are there and doing this job, they will be able to go do the thing we do best, vote, absolutely pick whoever it is you want to win in every single race down the ticket, go the fuck home, wait for the results, and get up the next morning and do your job. That's it. That's the story, right? And I think, I'm not saying there's not going to be, I'm not in charge of whether or not there's little mistakes there. And this is America. We know how to handle when there's little mistakes. If we did, we'd never launch nuclear submarines or, I think we've got to get past this fighting about fundamentally American institutions and move to fighting about policies, which actually does matter.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think the biggest challenges are for this year, just from an electoral standpoint, and what you guys are going to be doing? What are the things that you're kind of looking at from your perspective that may be different than the years in the past?
Yeah. So what we realize is not every single person from our community is going to sign up to be a poll worker, obviously. But what we have done is we've hosted events in states across the country that we've essentially invited a group of veterans who are poll workers to set up mock polling locations and invite other veterans, military family members, and the media to walk through and ask questions. So we did this. We started the year. We did it in New Hampshire. We've done it all over the country. We were yesterday, a couple days ago, in Houston. We were observers of their testing systems in the city of Houston. We've been in Maricopa County, done tours of the ballot counting facility with veterans. And we're going with open eyes and questions, not hey, we actually want to know. We always think it's funny. People assume that if you're a veteran or even a military spouse, you must know how the whole government works. You were in the government. It's no, you don't get it's not like I got married and it was here's your basic civics class to know it. No, no one like we're given credit for stuff we don't really deserve credit for, right? So if you do want to know how the system works, you got to go investigate the system. So that's something that's really important to us, is getting the word out that you can find out more and you could ask questions. The other thing that we are really passionate about getting the word out about is that, we as a community have each other to ask questions of. So if you are not going to go ask your local election official, find a veteran who's actually done the thing and ask them. And that's something that we think is really important too. And then the last thing is, there's a poll worker or election judge. They're named different in different counties, different jurisdictions. That is a person who works for the local government doing election work. So they sign up, volunteer, fill out the forms. You can do it at vetthe.vote. We'll get you right to your jurisdiction. Then you get trained by your local county people who are all, public servants. Mm-hmm. And then you show up and do your job. There's something different though that's called a poll watcher. And that is something that a political party wants you to do. Sometimes it's important, but sometimes it can be a little bit, look, it's important. It is important. You got to have people from both parties watching this stuff to make sure that it's safe and fair. But you also got to be aware that sometimes people inviting veterans to be poll watchers, especially when they invite you to bring weapons to the polls, is not really what we want our voting system to be like in America. And I know that many of my friends who have served overseas and observed elections overseas know what it's like when you're in a high security situation around voting. And that's not America. So I actually really don't want it to be. And I hope that, people in our community can feel that way and understand, let's make this back to how it was, 15, 20, 10 years ago, even, where the grandma checks your ID, you get your ballot, you vote, and you go home, right? And that's it.
Yeah, that's right. What's your measure for success on that? So for this election cycle, what's success look for you guys? Obviously, you had 100,000 is where you wanted to be. Congratulations on already crushing that. We hope to help you crush it even more, right, as we move into October and we really start to publish this and some other stuff for you guys. What's your success coming into this next one?
Well, so our next big, goal, look, we want to keep recruiting, right? We want to keep recruiting. Counties need a bench. Everyone needs poll workers. It is not something you might even be trained 3 or 4 days before an election, depending on what your county needs. So there is no time to stop. If you have the ability to sign up, you just sign up. And then if your county invites you to a training, you go to a training. This is not hard stuff, right? This is not signing up for 4 years, it's signing up for a few days, and you're going to get paid too. So vetthe.vote is that. So that's one thing. But the second thing is, we've partnered with the NFL, NASCAR, and the NBA. And the biggest element of what we want from those partnerships and from groups like yours is for people to know that we're there. 141,000 veterans and military family members are out there. They should be thanked twice for their service. They shouldn't be heckled. They shouldn't be given crap for standing in line trying to do their job. They should just be respected and thanked. And then so our goal over the next few weeks before this election is for as many Americans as possible to know we are on the job. There are a lot of people who signed up directly through us. They're in zip codes across the country. We're going to put a map on our site soon so you can see how incredible every state, everywhere. And these are people that are from us. They're from our community. So when you go vote and you see someone, you may see them wear their unit hat. You may see them wear a pin. You may even see them wear a t-shirt that's from their time in the service. It may be that those old ladies are married to Vietnam vets, right? Mm-hmm. Look at those people and assume that there's a good likelihood that they are serving again and that they should be thanked and not hassled.
Yeah, it's impressive, 14%, right? And I expect that to be more. That is a very large amount of folks. So, we're going to have a lot of veterans and I think spouses and others that are going to kind of listen to this. Me as just an inquisitive person, it's always good to kind of hey, I'm interested, right? I want to get involved, and I go to link, but maybe I'm a little bit apprehensive because it has nothing to do with nervousness about the system, but it's just something new, right? It's not something that we do every day. Or maybe I'm an introvert because I'm a veteran, and once I left service, I haven't talked to anybody in 10 years. This is the first time I've talked to somebody, you on podcast as an example. Can you give us just kind of an overview what a day would look like for a veteran or a family member that would want to get involved. They want to go to the link and they want to do it so that they can understand, hey, this is what your country's asking for you. And then how long is that? Is this a 2-3 week time period, or is it very short?
Well, the cool thing is that it's kind of what you have to give, which is really great. In our country, as people know, when you go vote, it's often older Americans. Like that's just what the demographics do, because they're retired and they have the time to give, right?
Yeah.
Like that's just how it's been. But it doesn't have to be, because you can sign up as a young working person. You can get trained, and you can choose, in many cases, you can choose when the training is a couple hours. You get paid for that training. And then you can look at the needs that your county, your jurisdiction has, and figure out when you can slot yourself in, right? What we've heard, everyone's gonna love this, but we heard in 2022, Georgia had a recount, right? And so Fulton County, Georgia actually contacted us. It was like, hey, we need like 15 more poll workers to make this recount happen for our county. Like, which is a relatively small number. And you guys so we went to the list of people who had already signed up through us in Fulton County, just that list. We filled every single spot. And every single one of those veterans showed up at exactly the moment they were asked to show up, and they did their job until the end. And that could have been a really long day, like opening the polls and getting there at 5 a.m. and doing, people, hey, you've been in the military, you've done that before. Or it could be that you work a different shift, or it could be that you're back in a ballot counting facility and you have a different timeline. Like there are so many different opportunities for these jobs. It could be that you go in there as a representative of your party and you're paired with someone from the other party and you're both there to observe. Like there's so many different jobs that need to be done. And think of it, like we don't need these people to work all the time. We just need them to work right around the elections. That's why there's a temporary workforce of Americans who volunteer. That's why you're needed. So I think when people sign up, they should know, first of all, the number one thing is going to be training. And, you're going to look at your schedule and you're going to say, can I do this? But either way, you're going to be in the system in your local community as a person who raised their hand and said, I'm here. So if there is a really dire situation where they don't have enough poll workers and it's counting down to time, your county might send a communication out to everyone on that list and say, please come in for training. We need you. And maybe that's the motivation you needed to just go. And look, you don't have to be an extrovert and spend the whole day talking to your neighbors. Some people set up the machines. Some people drive, there's so many different jobs, just like in the military, to get this done, that there's probably something for everyone and for everyone's comfort level.
Okay. That's great. So that's good. So we've got the individual, right? An individual like Ray that wants to become part of this. I could also see, as I listen to you talk, and it wasn't something I had thought about before, but, we obviously talk about veteran resource groups and stuff like that, right? So most companies, so again, it goes back to that conversation we're having for profit, where we want to give back, we want to do things. And immediately as I'm listening to you talk, I'm like, man, I think about some of my corporate time as a leader and go, man, this would be a great opportunity for me to take my veteran resource group or the company, but the veteran resource group, and say, hey, as part of our, volunteering and getting out in the community, because that's what you're normally doing. This would be an awesome way to do that, right? Like, yeah. I mean, this is perfect. You get an opportunity to not only vote, but get an opportunity to be part of that. So for organizations like that, is it the same process? I mean, is there something that, them contacting you guys that they can better understand how to do that from a corporate perspective?
Absolutely. We've done this before with a couple of companies where we've actually given an online brief to their whole veterans ERG to just be like, hey, this is the deal. This is who we are. This is what it is. And then, obviously a lot of companies have different locations. Their folks can all sign up through vet.vote to get to their local jurisdiction to find out where they would serve. But, the element of education about how the system is built and how it works is just as important for ERGs to go through as is signing up to actually serve. Some companies do offer time off for civic service. So you can go to your manager in your company and say, hey, do you offer, can I get a day of paid time off to go and do this poll working thing? Some do, some don't. We think it's great. We think more companies should do that. So that's something that we're passionate about. But either way, you will get paid for your time as a poll worker. So the day is not lost if you can't get that time. We also think, though, that getting back to what companies can do, what people can do in their different types of groups, like this is civics, not politics. this is an opportunity. Americans are terrified right now of talking about anything, even like patriotism, because it feels everything is political. It's not. Not everything is political. Okay. Patriotism, not political. The American flag, not political. And I'm happy to talk to anyone about that, right? Like as a 12-year military spouse, I am literally happy to talk to anyone about the flag and how it is absolutely, should be for everyone. I'm also, and I think this is one of those opportunities where you can talk about America, our system of government, the way we choose our leaders, the way we make decisions. And it is not about the party. It's about the process. And the military is similar. The military is training for stuff. It's a process. What the military goes and does with that process sometimes is up to politics. But the training, the camaraderie, the systems, the technology, all of that is the process, right? It's the same with voting. Like voting is the process. Who ends up as the leader? That's the politics. And so I think it's actually really similar to sort of make sure people understand you can talk about this stuff and not have it be about the political party that they're going to go vote for.
Yeah. And I think the larger you make, that veteran population, veteran spouses and all that, and folks understand. I mean, obviously there's only a couple scary things to talk about at the dinner table, right? Football's one, sports teams. Somebody's going to get a fight, it's almost guaranteed. And then I think second is politics, right? Like these are the two things that, and I joke about the first, obviously. So I love what you guys are doing as an organization. I've had an opportunity to be more involved. You guys have brought some folks onto the team that I knew from other organizations, and I'm just stoked. Like I love everything about it because everything that we think that we want. One of the things that we don't talk about a lot with veterans and spouses is the idea of community-based, civic-based service, right? So in the transition programs and everything we do, it's all focused on this idea of like go into these for-profit organizations. Right. And it's, when you think about what the military is, you're in a sense, you're doing something for the common good, right?
You're 100% doing something for the common good. You're 100% doing for the common good. And you lose that. And we know, obviously, I've even talked to military spouses who feel like they lost that. Like you feel like you are supporting a mission by supporting your service member, period. And you lose that when you get out. This is a way that for a few days a year, you get it back because you are working with people from all different backgrounds who just live in your community and you're getting something done for America. It is literally the most American thing. This is what we wanted. This is why we left the damn, the monarchy, because we wanted to pick our own leaders, right? This is the thing. And so we feel strongly that it has that benefit too, right? Yeah. Like doing this even just a few days a year, you do get that feeling of like, oh God, I'm doing it, right? And you should be thanked for your service again.
Yeah, that's such a good message. Okay, so we're going to make it through. We're going to crush this next one, right? You guys are going to get over 250,000. You said it, not me.
Come on.
We're going to get you as many as possible. But we get past this. What's the future of, Vet to Vote? I mean, what things do you have? And it may be larger than that. I know Vet to Vote is part of, but I would love to kind of get your thoughts and where you want to see the organization move, over the next 4 to 8 years. That'd be great to hear.
Awesome. So it's a really great opportunity because we started something last June 14th. Does that mean anything to you?
Yes, it sure does.
Okay. So Flag Day. Yep. We hosted, which is one of those holidays that like means a lot to me, always has. It's been something that like my parents taught me about when I was a kid. But it's one of those holidays that like we don't celebrate enough, right? Like, so June 14th, our organization, We the Veterans and Military Families, convened almost many of the major veteran military family organizations. We brought us all together in Mount Vernon, like the first American veteran leader.
Yeah, that's right.
My husband tells my kids the first American badass. And we brought these folks all together, and the whole conversation was about how can we, as a community of people who do civics over politics, because that's what you do when you're in the military, how can we show Americans what it means to be a good citizen? It has nothing to do with politics. It literally has nothing to do with politics that you can be a good citizen. And how can we bring Americans back together around the flag as a motivator, Flag Day as a motivator to just do good citizenship, not Facebook, not I posted, not I wore a pin, but like, what did you do? What did you get out and do as a citizen? And we believe that sets us up not only to do this every year on Flag Day, but it really gets us set up for the next big set of goals for our organization, which is that in 2025 will be the 250th anniversary of the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps. And then in 2026 will be the 250th anniversary of our country. And we are fully prepared to have a huge, very unifying focus coming from the voice of the military spouse and veteran to the rest of the country about what it actually means to come together on fundamental values of patriotism, country, and self-government, like what this all means, so that instead of this having to be something we focus on every election cycle, it's actually just like the way we do things.
That's
Our
right.
community already does it this way. Let's get back to these principles and let's show America what it means to have everyone in the country unified around some principles, and remind people that it feels really damn good.
Yeah, that's great. And I, from a mission roll call perspective, one of the most interesting things, veterans and spouses in general, we don't do a good job of saying what's wrong, right? Or wanting to talk about things because we've always shown by what we do. So there's this mentality of, hey, let's not talk about it, let's just do it, right? So it's interesting coming into mission roll call and seeing the organization when you're asking for feedback. You need this, I love what you guys are doing because it is that mindset of just do something, right? And it's what we've been programmed to do. It's simple. Hey, go do that thing. Okay, I'll be back in a minute. And off you go and do it and come back and do it. I look forward to a relationship with us and you guys in a much larger part.
Absolutely.
And we continue to advocate for, not only veterans, but their families through all of this, because I think if we lead the charge, because that's what we do from a military perspective and inside of the government space, I can't wait to see the impact that continues to happen over the next, 4 to 8 years. And thank you for the stuff you're doing. Okay, the last kind of question after you, is there any particular messages or anything that you want to kind of push out to all the listeners or those that are watching the podcast today?
Well, our tagline that we put on all of our videos, which I highly recommend people watch, especially if you're curious about how elections run. You find us at Vet the Vote, and you'll see we've got videos from all kinds of different cities, jurisdictions, veterans showing what it means to be a poll worker and what they do. But our tagline is vote, volunteer, and support those who do, period. Right. And it's very aligned with military service, right? Like either sign up or support those who signed up. And that's and of course, voting is our responsibility in being a part of this country, this incredible country. And I the last thing I'll say is, and this is like, I'm not trying to age myself, but none of that happens online.
That's true. So
if what you think you're doing to be a patriot is literally on your phone or behind a computer, I got questions.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's a good ending. Let me say this to you, Ellen. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing. I do want to talk to your staff and all those as well, because I'm sure they'll be listening. Thank them for all they're doing. All the volunteers, 140. We're going to get the 250K. We know we are. Let's make that 14%.
I love it. Thank you, Mr. Roll Call. Woo-hoo.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's push it. We can't wait for October to really start hammering this. But we thank you for everything. For those watching, for those listening, all the links that Ellen talked about, we're going to put it into the description for you guys. Please go down there, click it, join. You've joined once, right? You volunteered, you become part of the process. You have an opportunity to do it again, right? It's a very small amount of your time. And the best part is we lead from the front, not from the rear. So you guys doing that is easy. For your website, Ellen, is there any other pieces? Because I know we talked a little bit about Vet the Vote today. Yeah. Is there any other areas of focus?
That's a key one. Especially right now. The key one is vetThe.vote. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And
perfect.
Put our socials up there, I guess. But,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll get those all in there. Ellen, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate you here, and we look forward to the work that we will be doing with you guys for many, many years to come. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your work and your service.
Absolutely.